Wait, you're telling me that barn has to go? According to the HOA, it's visually offensive. That barn's been here longer than all of them. My grandfather was not a man who asked for permission. He built his life on 1,000 acres of rolling Tennessee hill country, land that had been in our family since before the county roads were paved, before the power lines went up, before anyone had ever heard the words homeowners association. He raised cattle, kept bees, ran a sawmill on the eastern ridge, and lived exactly as he pleased until the morning he didn't wake up. I got the call on a Tuesday in October. By Friday, I was driving a rented truck down a gravel road I hadn't traveled in 11 years. Watching the old oak trees blur past the windows like ghosts of a childhood I'd half forgotten. I was 34 years old, worked remotely in software development, and had exactly zero plans to inherit 1,000 acres of Tennessee countryside. But there it was. His will was clear, his lawyer was thorough, and my name was the only one on the deed. What nobody told me, what I had to discover entirely on my own, was that in the years since I'd last visited, a developer had quietly purchased the 200 acres bordering the southern edge of my grandfather's property, carved it into a planned community called Sycamore Ridge Estates, and handed its 38 homeowners a laminated rulebook and a board of 5 volunteers who apparently believed their jurisdiction extended to the edge of the known universe. The first letter arrived 3 weeks after I moved in. It came in a crisp white envelope with the Sycamore Ridge HOA logo embossed in green and gold on the upper left corner. Very official, very serious. It informed me that my property, referred throughout the letter as the adjacent parcel, was in violation of Community Aesthetic Standards, Section 4, Subsection C, which prohibited visually disruptive structures, overgrown natural areas, or any condition creating an unsightly impression. From within the community sightlines, my grandfather's barn was visible from 2 houses on the southern end of Sycamore Ridge Estates. It was a 100-year-old red barn that had been standing longer than those homeowners had been alive. But according to the HOA, its peeling paint was offensive to the community. I was given 30 days to remedy the condition. I set the letter on the kitchen table and went outside to feed the chickens. The second letter came 2 weeks later. Same envelope, sharper tone. It referenced the first letter, noted that no remediation had been observed, and informed me that I had now entered a formal notice period. It was signed by the HOA president, a woman named Brenda Sterling, whose signature was large and looping, the way of someone who had recently discovered authority and was deeply enjoying it. I read it on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched a red-tailed hawk circle the eastern field. Then I put it with the first letter. The third letter arrived on a Thursday morning, and this one was different. This one had the words "Final Notice" printed in bold red across the top. It informed me that the HOA had consulted with legal counsel. Brenda had underlined legal counsel twice, and that they were prepared to pursue all available remedies if I did not comply within 7 days. It threatened fines. It suggested the possibility of a lien. It implied that my failure to cooperate was an act of hostility toward the community. I sat with that letter for a long time. Then I drove to the county courthouse. I was there for most of the afternoon, working through property records, boundary surveys, and zoning maps with a county clerk named Donna, who had the patience of a saint and a gift for finding exactly the right document at exactly the right moment. What Donna and I confirmed that afternoon was something I had suspected from the moment I read the phrase "adjacent parcel." My property did not fall within the Sycamore Ridge HOA's jurisdiction, not 1 inch of it. The HOA's authority extended to the lots within the platted subdivision, 38 of them, all clearly defined, all neatly bounded by surveyed lines recorded in 2019. My 1,000 acres sat entirely outside those lines, had always sat outside those lines, and no legal mechanism existed by which the HOA could regulate, fine, lien, or otherwise compel me to do anything at all. Brenda Sterling had been writing strongly worded letters to a man she had absolutely no power over, I also discovered something else while I was there. The access road that the developer had built along the southern boundary of my property. The one the Sycamore Ridge residents used as a secondary entrance to the neighborhood. Crossed a thin strip of my land for approximately 40 feet near the creek bed. The original developer had obtained a temporary easement from my grandfather in 2018, recorded and signed. That easement had expired in 2023 and had never been renewed. I drove home, made dinner, and called a real estate attorney named Arthur Reed, who had been recommended to me by my grandfather's lawyer. I explained everything. He listened carefully, asked 3 precise questions, and then was quiet for a moment. "You're not in their HOA," he said, "correct? And the easement lapsed 2 years ago." Another pause. "Mr. Vance," he said, "I think you're in a very strong position." Arthur drafted a response letter that went out the following Monday. Sent certified mail with return receipt, addressed to Brenda Sterling and the entire Sycamore Ridge HOA board. It was 4 pages long and methodical, in a way that only legal correspondence can be. Every claim sourced, every citation attached, every assumption the HOA had made carefully dismantled with the relevant county records enclosed as exhibits. It confirmed that my property sat entirely outside the HOA's jurisdiction. It noted that their letters constituted attempted regulatory overreach against a private landowner. It pointed out the lapsed easement, and it stated clearly that while I had no current intention of closing the access road, that decision was entirely mine to make at my sole discretion, and that any further correspondence from the HOA asserting jurisdiction over my property would be forwarded to the Real Estate Commission along with a formal complaint. I heard nothing for 12 days. Then Brenda Sterling knocked on my door. She was shorter than I'd imagined, somewhere in her late 50s, wearing a polo shirt with the Sycamore Ridge logo on it. She looked like a woman who had rehearsed something on the drive over and had forgotten most of it at the door. She introduced herself. I invited her in for coffee because my grandfather always said you should extend courtesy even when it hasn't been earned. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd stacked her letters, and Brenda explained that there had been a misunderstanding, that the board had perhaps acted without fully verifying the property lines, that she personally hoped we could start fresh as neighbors. I told her I appreciated that. I told her the access road would remain open as long as my neighbors and I maintained a respectful relationship. I told her I had no interest in conflict, but that I had a very strong interest in my property rights. She nodded a lot. She drank her coffee quickly. When she left, I stood on the porch and watched her car disappear down the gravel road, past the old red barn with its peeling paint, past the beehives my grandfather had kept for 30 years, out through the gap in the tree line where hill country opened up, wide and unhurried and entirely, absolutely mine. I thought about my grandfather then, a man who never asked for permission. I was starting to understand why. Subscribe to Karen Conflict for more HOA stories like this.